All right, let's talk about one of the most maddening things that can happen when you're trading. We're going to pull back the curtain and look at how, and more importantly, why the market sometimes feels like it has a personal vendetta against you. So let's get right into it.
You know the feeling, right? You place a trade, you do everything right, you set a smart stop loss to protect your capital, and then you just watch in horror as the price dives, hits your stop perfectly, and then immediately reverses and takes off like a rocket without you. If you're nodding your head right now, I'm here to tell you, no, you are not crazy, and you're not just imagining things. So to really get what's going on, you first have to understand who's playing the game. On one side, you've got us, retail traders. We're working with smaller positions, and we tend to use predictable, textbook strategies. On the other side, you've got the giants, smart money. Think hedge funds, big banks. Now, they have a very different problem than we do. They need to move massive amounts of money without tipping their hand. And to do that, they need one thing above all else, liquidity. And guess where the easiest place to find that liquidity is? Yeah, by taking advantage of our predictable behavior.
What you need to realize is that what looks like just random, chaotic price action is often a very deliberate, very structured playbook. People call it a liquidity grab, a shakeout, or a stop hunt. Whatever you call it, it's designed to do one simple thing: to shake you out of your shares at the absolute worst possible moment.
In this playbook, it follows a pretty predictable 5-step cycle. It's all built around manipulating emotions to create an opportunity for them. It starts with a setup, then they spring the trap, they engineer panic, they scoop up all the shares on the cheap, and then finally they light the rocket for a huge reversal. Let's break down exactly how they pull off each step.
So first up is the setup. Now, the big institutions have these incredibly sophisticated algorithms, and they are constantly scanning the market for what they call liquidity pools. And here's the kicker. Those stop-loss orders we all learned to place right under a key support level or just below a big round number like 50 or $100, well, to them, that's not a safety net. That is a giant flashing target.
Okay, so once their algorithms have located that big cluster of stops, they spring the trap. This is the part we call the stop hunt. Smart money will start actively and sometimes aggressively selling shares to deliberately push the price down, aiming for that zone like a guided missile. And the effect is just devastatingly quick. See, the second your stop loss gets hit, your broker automatically turns it into a market sell order. Now multiply that by thousands of other traders whose stops are in the same area. What you get is an immediate, massive flood of selling pressure that just feeds on itself, pushing the price down even faster and harder. It's a cascade.
But they don't stop there. To make sure they can get every last share they want, they need to amplify the fear. They might paint the tape, which is a fancy way of saying they trade back and forth to create the illusion of huge selling volume. Or they might time the drop to happen right when some vague negative headline comes out. The goal is simple: create maximum fear. They want you to think the story has changed and join the selling stampede willingly.
And this is the whole point of the exercise. This is the moment of truth. While everybody else is panicking and being forced to sell, those institutional algorithms are just sitting there, quietly waiting at the bottom with huge limit buy orders ready to go. That massive flood of sell orders from us, that's the exact liquidity they needed to fill their enormous positions without sending the price higher.
And then, once they've filled their bags, once they've bought everything they wanted from the panic sellers, they just take their foot off the gas. They stop applying that downward pressure. And with all the nervous sellers now totally flushed out, there's almost no resistance left. And what happens? The price reverses hard and fast, leaving everyone who sold at the lows completely behind.
Okay, so that's the playbook. It sounds kind of bleak, I know. But here's the thing. Just understanding that this game is being played is the first and most important step to defending yourself. So that brings us to the real question, right? How do you stop being such an easy target? The good news is you don't have to beat these guys at their own game. That's not the goal. You just have to recognize the game they're playing and simply choose not to play by their rules. So let's get into your survival guide. I'm going to give you 5 things you can start doing right now to protect yourself.
First, and this is probably the most important one, you have to rethink where you put your stop loss. If you see a support level on a chart that looks absolutely perfect and obvious to everyone, assume it's a trap. Assume it's going to be broken. So instead of putting your stop right underneath it with the rest of the herd, give your trade some breathing room. Put it way lower than you think you need to survive that inevitable shakeout.
But I can hear you thinking, how can I afford a wider stop without risking my entire account? And that is the right question to ask. The answer is all about your position sizing. See, the number one reason traders use those dangerously tight stops is because their position size is way too big for their account. If you want to safely use a wider stop, you have to trade a smaller number of shares. It's that simple. And look, this table makes it crystal clear. Let's say your max risk on a trade is $200. In the top row, if you buy 100 shares, you're forced to use a tight 2% stop to stay within your risk limit. But look at the bottom row. If you just cut your position size in half to 50 shares, you can now double your stop loss width to 4%, and your total dollar risk is exactly the same, $200. You haven't taken on any more risk, but you've just dramatically increased your trade's chance of surviving a shakeout.
Number 3 is all about patience. These stop hunts feed on intraday, knee-jerk panic. How many times have you seen a stock just plunge below support at 10 a.m. only to rally all the way back and close positive by 4 p.m.? It happens all the time. So the lesson is, stop making impulsive decisions. Wait for the daily candle to actually close below that support level to confirm it's a real breakdown, not just a fake out.
All right, this next one is a huge mindset shift. Instead of seeing that sharp, scary plunge as a threat, start seeing it as an opportunity. If you know that smart money is engineering this panic specifically to buy shares on the cheap, well, why shouldn't you? Think about placing a limit buy order right where you know everyone else's stop losses are getting triggered. You're literally buying the fear. You stop being the victim and you become the one providing liquidity. And finally, number 5, learn to be skeptical. If you see a chart setup that looks absolutely perfect, like it's straight out of a textbook, a beautiful flat base, a clear support level that every single person on Twitter is talking about, you should be extremely suspicious. That's not an opportunity, it's bait. Expect that level to be broken. A much smarter play is to let the shakeout happen and then buy the strength as it reclaims that level.
This quote really just sums the whole thing up perfectly. Your goal is not to go to war with billion-dollar institutions. You won't win. The goal is to recognize the game they're playing and just opt out. Stop being a predictable pawn on their chessboard.
And when you do that, when you understand this 5-step cycle and you start making these little adjustments, you completely flip the script. You go from being the predictable target they need for liquidity to a savvy tactician who sees their moves coming and can even use them to your own advantage.
So I'll just leave you with this one question to think about. Now that you know the playbook, the next time you see that perfect setup, what are you going to see? An easy trade or a carefully laid trap? Knowing the difference is everything. That's all for now.